Hey y'all, welcome back to Cajun Country Living.
Today we're going to do something a little different than we have been doing. We are actually going to work on this truck that we showed in a video several videos back. Now this truck is going to be my everyday driver, grocery go-getter, whatever you want to call it.
Our groceries.
Well, I was just saying mine because I don't know if y'all remember or not when we had this conversation. When she seen this truck, she's like, that's definitely yours.
We're gonna muddle through this together, and I have a lot to learn through this process, and I cannot tell y'all how excited I am to just get one more lesson underneath my belt.
Here's what we have to date. We have really not done anything with this truck. We've been so busy with other projects and things going on, and I am really excited to get started on this thing. But we're gonna be bringing y'all along with us every step of the way, just like we promised.
And it's crazy how many of y'all are just as excited as we are to get this project rolling.
I don't think none of y'all as excited as I am. I am super stoked. I'm ready to go. Are you ready? All right, let's get it.
Let's get started. Oh, it reeks in there. Woo! So the first thing we need to do is get an air freshener.
Yes, definitely. Okay, first things first, before we even move this truck, I'm not even sure it's got enough gas left in it to even start it. I don't know, it might have like 11 drops in it or something. So we're gonna get some fuel put in here, get it pulled out there on the road. We have some fresh rock, not that that's ideal. I was really hoping that our shop would be more done than it is, but this weather's not cooperating. So we're gonna put it in the rocks, at least if we drop nuts, bolts, whatever, there is a chance that we might find them. Well, that's custom. This is a 1990 Chevrolet Silverado. Now this truck, from back bumper to front bumper, it has so many little things wrong with it that I'm not even gonna bore you and begin to list them all. Little things like, look at this body line. Look how far down the cab is from the bed. The body mounts are shot. They're gonna have to be replaced. The door hinge pins are worn out, letting the door sag. Even the gaskets and hardware around the windows is coming loose. Now this truck has a 5.7 liter V8 or a 350 cubic inch engine in it. And Lydia and I found receipts to where this engine supposedly was rebuilt in 21. Now, the spark plug wires say different. There's got a whole lot of makeshift things on here that need to really be sanitized, cleaned up, made nice and neat. Wires that are kind of twisted together, and I'm gonna have to figure all that stuff out. This truck does run and it feels strong, but you can tell that it's definitely out of time. I'm fairly certain these spark plug wires are shot. We're gonna take the cap off of the distributor. We're gonna look at all of that. And I'm even gonna get rid of this chrome. I know what you're thinking. If you get rid of the chrome, away goes all the horsepower. But in this case, we're definitely gonna get rid of that eyesore.
Yeah, drop in the comments and let us know if you want that. We will gladly ship it to you. Actually, I will gladly ship it to you.
This engine is a throttle body injection, a TBI setup. So this is fuel injected. It's got an injector on both sides. And we've run some chemical through it to help clean those up. And those look a little bit better as far as the fan and the spray. But whenever we bought this thing, you could put it in reverse or drive and it would just wreck your neck. So in order to get it home, we changed the throttle position sensor and the air idle control.
Today's video is sponsored by Delete Me. Delete Me is a hands-free subscription service that will remove your personal information that is being sold online. In today's day and age, personal data is sold by data brokers, and almost 1/3 of Americans have been a victim of identity theft, and you have the right to stay private and protect your personal data. Delete Me's privacy experts remove you from hundreds of data brokers all year long. Get a privacy report in 7 days. They remove all your personal data like your phone number, address, etc. They monitor sites and repeat removals as necessary. And you can also customize removal requests and much more. Delete Me's mission is simple: to remove customers' information from search results. Delete Me can help to decrease threats, risk of identity theft, and stalking, and also becoming a target of financial risks. That is why we have personally selected Delete Me to help remove our data. So y'all head over to Delete Me and try for yourself. Go to joindeleteme.com/Cajun20 and use code Cajun20 to get 20% off all consumer plans. All the details are going to be listed in the description below, and thank you Delete Me for sponsoring this video. So like Jim said, what we're going to be doing today is giving this truck a really good tune-up. Now the only thing that I have ever touched before was spark plugs, whenever it comes to the motor side anyway, of a dirt bike. So I would assume that it's kind of the same, right? Spark plugs have to be the same.
That's right. So you got 8 of them except one. But we feel like giving this truck a real good tune-up. I mean, the sensors, everything in here is 30 years old. So we really suspect that this motor is in good shape mechanically, but we really won't know that because it has high idle issues and it varies in RPMs up and down when it's idling. And I really suspect that it's bad out of time. And the only way to know that is to start off good, fresh, clean. Good spark plug wires, spark plugs, distributor cap, rotor, all that kind of good stuff.
While Jim went to go get the parts that we're going to be using today, I'm going to start cutting all these spark plug wires and getting them ready to change them out. And we're going to start right here where we have some type of tape holding this wire to the spark plug, and no heck if I know, I'm just going to cut the tape. Whenever I took those spark plugs out, I noticed that something was leaking, and I want to say it might have been coming from here. I don't know if that's of concern or not, but
Just a little coolant. I mean, we have a ton of it. What's it going to hurt for a few drips? You know what I mean? Do you ever have that feeling that maybe you made a purchase that you shouldn't have sometime?
you better not be saying that and meaning it.
Well, one good thing is the further we dig already, I'm already seeing a lot of reasons why this truck isn't running smooth. The distributor cap's got a ton of corrosion in there. Be hard to see, but you got a lot of wear patterns. These spark plug wires is nicked up. They're in awful shape. And don't get me wrong, Y'all watch this video, don't do anything that I do because I just know enough to get by. But a telltale sign of somebody that's struggling in the mechanic world, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but come on now. Oh well, we don't need this anyway. With the plethora of parts that we've already bought, of course, a rotor was one of them. So we're going to take this thing off. I think it's definitely going to need it by the looks of the distributor cap. It really don't look that bad. It does have a little wear, a little buildup on it, but it doesn't look bad at all. Now that we got the distributor out of the way, I see the next thing that I'm going to have to put on my wish list, and that is a sending unit for the oil pressure. It's leaking from the housing, and I've noticed every time I started this truck up, I had like 80 pounds of oil pressure, and I knew that wasn't right, but now I can see the reason. It's coming from this sending unit. Now, ever since I got this truck, I have been looking forward to taking these spark plugs out, because spark plugs can tell you a lot about what's going on with your motor, engine, before I get corrected. And this one, the plug don't look really bad. It looks like it's running rich, but the ground strap is bent over to one side. I don't know what the heck going on there, and they don't have much of a gap. So that's probably less than 30 thousandths of a gap. And we're looking at probably between 35 and 40 thousandths of a gap. Depending on who you ask or who you talk to, they prefer different on these TBIs. But we're going to set ours at about 38 thousandths, and I think that'll be just fine. You can smell the fuel on this.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, I suspected that it was running rich because it had a bad miss and it was out of time. So these spark plugs, the way they are, they're wet, and the wear on them just kind of goes hand in hand with what we were thinking anyway. Look at the gap on this plug. I bet it's not 20 thousandths of an inch. I mean, it is super tight.
What causes that?
Whoever put them in didn't set them, or they thought they were setting it right and accidentally didn't, or LOT.
LOT.
Lack of talent. These 4 plugs came out of the passenger side, and these 4 came out of the driver's side. Now remember, each one of these has their own independent little injector there. But overall, they all look the same. They look pretty good, with the exception of this fella right here. And that kind of concerns me because 1 out of the 8 looks different. Now, that might not be a reason for concern, but we might have to run a compression check on that cylinder just to make sure that something's not going on there, because usually that's a sign of something that's not quite right. I'm just really hoping that that was like the best cylinder there and we don't have any problems. But one can hope. So we took these Autolite spark plugs out, and we're going to go back in with AC Delco. Now, I have preset the gap on every one of these spark plugs to 38 thousandths of an inch. Why is the left side, the passenger side of every vehicle, a pain in the neck to change spark plugs in. It's like the engineers decided to put everything on the passenger side of the truck that could possibly get in your way.
With every vehicle you've ever done, the left side's always been worse?
Yeah, now that I think about it. So here we are on day number 2. There's a couple things going on here. It's going to be starting to rain tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. So it's a little cold, it's a little windy, it's a little overcast today, but I got permission from the boss to go ahead and try to get this truck finished. Now, I wasn't completely dumb whenever I set this truck up in the middle of the driveway to do this work, if you know what I mean.
So now it became a priority, right? Now
It's amazing how that becomes a priority when it's parked right in the center of your driveway, you know? We were running out of daylight the other evening, and I didn't purchase a oil pressure sensor. And there it is right there. We noticed that it was covered with oil, and also whenever you start the truck, even though it didn't run the best, it was still showing like 90 pounds of pressure, and I knew that wasn't true. So in the meantime, we picked up another oil pressure sensor to replace this one. Now, the top of this distributor was covered with rust, but it was operating fairly well, I believe. So anyway, we just cleaned that area up and got it ready for the new distributor cap, rotor butt, and all that good stuff. We know this truck is out of time. I just don't know how much. But here's what we're going to do. If you'll see on this little sawtooth scale right here, this is 0 degrees. There's a groove in this harmonic balancer that should line up with this when the number 1 cylinder is top dead center. What I'm going to do is take a little drop of paint and put right here at 0. And I'm also going to mark the groove on the harmonic balancer. That way it'll be easier to visibly see whenever we're chasing this timing light. So this is one of them things that's not the easiest to get to anyway. I'm going to try not to take nothing else off to get to it. They probably tightened it up because it was leaking, and they thought that they was going to fix the leak just by tightening it up some more. Well, it looks the same. It's just smaller. Same wiring terminals. Look, they even left us a little dielectric grease in there.
Is that good for anything?
Yeah, they probably think that I'm going to have to tear this back apart after we fix it. I'm going to put a little bit of Teflon tape on this sensor. I know the old one was leaking, so I don't want that to happen again. This thing is not the easiest thing in the world to get to. Not a whole bunch, just a little bit, just enough to seal it off.
Jim had just put in this air idle control, has a zip tied perfectly, nothing wrong with it, perfectly fine right now. But of course, to be able to get to the ERG valve, we're definitely gonna have to take this back out, go figure, to be able to get to that ERG valve and change it out. So I'm gonna take out this AIC valve real quick so we can knock that out as well.
So Lydia got the air idle control out of the way, so we're fixing to replace the EGR. But we're also going to replace this EGR solenoid. Like I said, this one's 30 plus years old. No time like the present, go ahead and put a new solenoid in. At least we'll know our bases is covered at that point.
Exhaust gas regulator. Radiator.
Exhaust gas return.
Return is nowhere close to radiator.
Well, you had an R.
Well, yeah, EGR. Exhaust gas radiator. Wait. Exhaust gas return. Did that really used to look like this at one point?
I'm sure it did. Somewhere back in the wonder years. What I wouldn't give for some good ratchet wrenches right about now. That'd be so nice.
Uncle Amazon. Give her 2 days.
I have to ask Santa for.
The nuts were supposed to just come off of these, and these were supposed to stay in place. But now we have both for some reason, and I guess we're going to have to figure out how to get the nuts off unless you have an extra set of these. Which I don't think that it came with an extra set of these.
All you have to do is hold a backup on the ends of these. But the problem with those are they were so close to the EGR valve, you couldn't get a socket or a little tiny wrench on them. So we just had to back them all the way out.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Hey, did that one come with a gasket?
It did.
Thank
goodness. Because I
goodness.
almost dropped it and lost it.
I'm glad you didn't.
What was it that we had to work on that we had to build our own gasket? Do you remember that? It was like with that red.
Oh, that was a 60 horse outboard motor. Remember we used cardboard? In
Yes.
that red Permatex? It worked.
And we used a chopstick to spread that Permatex around.
Hey, you do whatever works, you know?
It still runs to today. Sometimes all you need is a little piece of cardboard.
I need a little bit of oil. Put on these threads.
I don't think we were running outside.
Look at here. I'll borrow you a little bit from right here. Perfect amount. Look at there. So what this is going to do, a vacuum line comes from the motor into here. Another vacuum line goes to this EGR. This is going to control the EGR valve opening and closing. So it's kind of a weird thing the way these EGRs work. It actually allows exhaust gas to go back into the motor to help keep the motor running cooler, actually. It really doesn't make sense, but it does if you think about the science of it. Whoever came up with this idea was extremely smart. We have the EGR replaced and the EGR solenoid. Now we're going to start going back with the firing system. We're going to put the rotor back on, distributor cap. We're going to start laying out these spark plugs and make sure everything is in the right firing order sequence. Now, one thing I mentioned that I'm fairly certain this truck is out of time. And if we were going to time it from ground zero, what we would do is on the driver's side front cylinder is the number one cylinder. So we would put the rotor on. So you'd want that rotor on the distributor pointing right at this number one cylinder in perfect line. And that's going to get you in the ballpark of how to adjust your distributor. That is with the number one cylinder pushed all the way up on the compression stroke. Yeah, but as of right now, it's kind of leading me to the same determination I was in earlier with the rotor pointing straight towards number one cylinder. When you look down there at our timing marks, we're off about 1/2 of an inch. So hopefully I don't have to take this distributor completely out and move it a whole tooth to put it back down. I just don't know at this point. We're gonna get the distributor cap put back on, all the spark plug wires run, and just see how close we are. So now is the moment of truth. We got all the spark plug wires put back together and everything should be as it needs to be. But before I put all the spark plug wire clips on to make them all nice and neat, we're gonna double check our work. I'm gonna crank this thing up. We'll see if it'll crank up, and then we're gonna go from there. I did, however, go ahead and change the oxygen sensor. I'd actually forgotten that I'd purchased a new one. Not that I suspected there was anything wrong with it. It's just old, and we was going through cleaning all this mess up, and we had a new one. It wasn't very expensive at all, so why not change it? Well, let's see if this thing will start, and then we'll go on to the next step. It did start right up, but it really sounds like it's out of time. I'm going to put the timing light on it and just see where it's at and see if it needs to be adjusted. Well, just like we suspected, it was way out of time. Like, it was advanced so far, I'm surprised it didn't detonate something in this motor and completely tear it up. I'm going to disconnect the electronic advance. That way the computer won't be trying to accommodate my adjustments on the distributor. I'm going to let this thing get up to temperature. We're going to dial it in and lock it down. So far, this seems to be a really good success. We did a really good tune-up on the engine, and it starts up like it's supposed to now. It's not in a bind. It idles well. The injectors are injecting, so I guess the computer is getting along with all the new sensors and telling them all what to do, and this thing has really, really smoothed out. It's turning into something already that I know that I'm going to really enjoy. I love projects like these, especially when they start coming together just like you planned. And I suspected that this engine was in really good shape. It was just way out of time and had all kinds of little small issues, and that's what we're finding.